since 9/11, there's been an unprecedented growth in the U.S. military machine. But one underreported facet of the military-industrial complex is the exploitation of social sciences, namely anthropology. Earlier, I spoke with anthropologist David Price, who studied the phenomenon in depth. Price is the author of Weaponizing Anthropology, which explores the relationship between anthropology and America's terror wars. I first asked him what bothers him most about the misused application of the social science.
My biggest concerns are when anthropology is used against the people it's studying. I think probably the best use for anthropology is to represent the views of people who are studied, to people in positions of power, so that these voices can be heard, not so that these voices can be used against the people.
How do military and intelligence communities use the field of anthropology for their benefit?
Good question. There's a whole range of things that's going on now. Probably the most famous or most public program is something called Human Terrain Systems, which is embedding anthropologists or social scientists who call themselves anthropologists with the troops, with militaries that are operating in fields of conflict, Afghanistan and Iraq. And they serve in advisory roles there, which are ethically very problematic. But anthropologists are in the past have also done direct intelligence work. They've done troop education. They've done a whole range of things for militaries.
How are human terrain teams incorporated, and why are they incorporated in modern warfare? And you've talked about how this has been exacerbated in a post-9/11 world. Elaborate on that as well.
Yeah, well, the human terrains, are a post-9/11 invention. They really came into being 2006, 2007. And I guess there's sort of two answers in terms of what these human terrain teams are doing. They claim, people working for the program claim what they're doing is essentially education, that what they're doing is trying to reduce harm when they're in fields of operation by helping provide information that could reduce what they call kinetic engagement, reduce shooting downrange while in these sort of settings. But, the work that I've done and that other critics of human terrain have done shows that, in fact, what they're doing often involves intelligence work. They're sort of mixing intelligence work, identifying who's friendly, who's not friendly when they're in these fields of conflict. And that's very troubling, because sort of a core anthropological ethic is that you do not betray the people you're studying. And if what you're doing is making them, legible to armed forces that are working in these fields, it's very dangerous for everyone who's involved.
Certainly. How do you think, or do you think, that the current nation-building missions that U.S. foreign policy incorporates facilitates the need for anthropology in modern warfare?
Well, unfortunately, the way that nation building is used in this sort of sense really involves counterinsurgency. It involves co-opting people in ways that are undemocratic movements. So, unfortunately, the sort of U.S. policy that the Obama administration is continuing from the Bush years really involves imposing the American idea of what these nation states should look like. So, unfortunately, they come looking to anthropologists and other social scientists to help smooth out these sort of larger plans that don't really represent necessarily the interests of the people that who are being impacted by this. There are roles anthropologists could play in this process, and those roles could involve increasing the voice of the people who are being impacted by this global American policy. But unfortunately, when you're working for the military, that isn't really the direction that the voice of anthropology is being used.
Let's talk about in academia and on the educational level, how widespread is this military intelligence infiltration in the university system today as opposed to the past few decades?
Yeah, it's a real growing trend. Probably the most significant thing that's happening is there are a whole number of programs in the last 8 years that have come along. Programs like the Pat Roberts Intelligence Scholars Program, the rise of the National Security Education Program, which does predate 9/11, and the Minerva Project. These are all programs, certainly the first three programs are ones which there's a payback requirement for scholars. So whereas in the past, 20, 30 years ago, scholars would get funding to study languages of interest to national security or to do independent research, they could get federal funds, carry out their work, do what they were going to do, reach their own conclusions. And now there's a shift for these programs where, while traditional funds to attend university are decreasing or to do research, we have these programs where the scholars who engage in their own work sign these agreements that require them to go work for in the intelligence sector or to work in the national security sector after they complete this work.
More specifically, in your view as an anthropologist, how does working for or even simply cooperating with U.S. military and intelligence violate the code of ethics for the academic and scientific community?
Well, it's possible that an anthropologist could work for a military or intelligence agency and not violate the code of ethics. I mean, really, the fundamental code of ethics demands that each of us carefully consider, doing no harm, representing who we are to the people that we're studying, getting voluntary informed consent, these sort of best practice things. And it's possible I could go work for the military. I could work for perhaps the Department of Veterans Affairs and study the poor care that many vets are receiving and use that information. It's even theoretically possible I could work for the Central Intelligence Agency and do work where I would, say, study the CIA as an organization for the CIA and not violate those things. But it gets much more problematic when anthropologists are studying others to make them vulnerable.
I just wanted to get your assessment on the book's title, because it's a really powerful statement, weaponizing anthropology. What does that mean to you?
Well, to me it means, unfortunately, many in the military and intelligence agency recognize only part of anthropology as being useful. And what they recognize is the idea, or their hope, it's not my hope, their hope that anthropology contains these tools, these little secrets that can be used to manipulate other populations. And so there's a growing use of anthropology for counterinsurgency and other means within military and intelligence agencies as a weapon, trying to take the secrets of culture and use them against these very cultures.
And just to wrap it up, we have about 30 seconds left, but what can university faculty and also the American Anthropological Association do in response to this phenomenon?
We all need to have increasing awareness of the militarization of American universities. We're very aware the corporatization has been taking over. Unfortunately, funds are getting so tight, people are getting ready to sort of change past practices. But what we can all do within universities is remain aware and remain vigilant and protect our academic freedom by standing up and speaking out about these trends.
Well, thank you for standing up and speaking out. David Price, anthropologist and author of Weaponizing Anthropology. Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, Abby.